welcome back to the Prepared School Psych Podcast. In today's episode, I am joined by Kristine Esposito, who will share her journey in school psychology, her leadership experience with the New Jersey Association of School Psychologists, and the strategies she's used to support both students and the broader school community. Kristine is the immediate past president of the New Jersey Association of School Psychologists, having served as president during the 2023-24 term. She has served on the executive board of the association for 8 years as a member of several committees, including government and professional relations, professional development, finance, newsletter, diversity and research, and chaired the conference committee from 2019 to 2022. She earned her master's in school psychology and education specialist degree from Rowan University. She is a nationally certified school psychologist and a member of the National Association of School Psychologists. She has worked as a school psychologist and child study team member in several school districts in New Jersey, in both rural and urban settings, and previously worked part-time providing counseling for LGBTQ plus youth while in graduate school. She also has experience as an advocate for victims of domestic violence. Kristine currently works as a school psychologist for the School District of Philadelphia. Kristine, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to get into all of these different pieces that have led you to where you're at today. But if all my listeners know, we always start off with a great question. What is your favorite TV show you are watching right now?
So I'm a mom of a 2-year-old and with another on the way. So I don't get a chance to watch a lot of television. But when I do, I usually like to watch documentaries or like it's a good docuseries. And then if I want something for like levity, I usually watch Modern Family. I just love that show. So,
Love that. Love that. Is there any good documentaries you've been watching lately?
so I actually just finished the one about the Karen Reed murder trial. And now I know she's on trial again. So
Yes, I'm listening to the podcast daily
yeah.
about the update. Yes.
So yeah, and I love podcasts, so that's kind of my thing. Like when I'm on a walk or driving, I actually listen to yours and a few other school psych podcasts. So
That's nice. Well, in one sentence, how would your colleagues describe you as a school psychologist?
I think they would say that I'm caring, empathetic, and compassionate. I really, try to make sure that I'm conveying that the child's best interests are at heart when I'm talking to parents, when I'm consulting with staff and teachers and administration. Like that's really what we're here to do. And then when I'm working with students, I just want them to know that I'm here to support them. Like school psychologists are here to help. So in any way, I'm trying to actively listen and just kind of meet their concerns too.
Lovely. Well, it seems like you've had an interesting journey. So, do you want to talk a little bit about your journey as a school psych?
Sure. I actually started in a different field before I became a school psychologist. I was in business doing like sales and marketing, and I was not really feeling very fulfilled in that role. So I was like, I just want to really help people. So I kind of started like looking into different things like medical school teaching. And then I came across school psychology and I was like, oh, this combines my passion for education and psychology and working with children. And so I'm so happy being a school psychologist. And, it's very rewarding just helping children realize their potential and helping them be successful in school, but also out of school too. So it's just been great. And like you said, I worked in various districts. So I started, I worked in some like kind of smaller or like suburban settings and then in the rural settings. And now I'm in an urban setting. So I've just kind of explored it all and learned so much from each experience. So
Well, I'm curious with this interesting marketing background. Anything from that background that you feel like you utilize in your role as a school psychologist?
yeah, well, I think it really has helped me a lot actually, like in leadership. I feel like on the board, just having that business background and how things kind of operate in that way and then just applying it to the organization. And then also I think in the role, it's just, again, always kind of like, because even marketing, you need psychology, just kind of trying to realize what everybody's needs are, right? And making sure that they're getting met in some kind of way. So I feel like that has applied to school psychology as well.
Interesting. Speaking of podcasts, I was recently listening to a podcast episode where they were talking about marketing strategies that so many businesses use and how they're very similar to some strategies that sometimes cults use to get people in their cults. It was such an interesting podcast episode. All of these intermixing different fields here.
Great. Yeah, I didn't want to do anything with a cult.
Well, speaking of the state association and all of your work there, at what point in your journey did you become more involved? Obviously, you have held many different roles there.
Yes. I actually started as a student. So when I was still in graduate school, I went to NASP and I met a lot of our board members there, and they just had such enthusiasm for the field. It was just contagious. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to start going to some board meetings. And then eventually I joined several different committees, just kind of, I wasn't really like a leader in those positions yet or anything. I just kind of was like active in the group doing different things. Then they asked me to be the conference committee chair. So I did that for a number of years, which I just loved. I just love professional development and continuing education. And then eventually I was nominated for president-elect and president, and now I am the past president and also the editor of the newsletter, which I just love to do too. So it's a lot of different roles.
Lots of different roles. Well, let's tackle first your most recent state association past president role. So, what were some of your key initiatives when you were president? Like, what were you really passionate about working on? I know you mentioned you brought in some of your marketing background when working with all of these wonderful people.
Yeah, so when I came in, we were actually kind of just getting out of COVID. So,
Mhm.
and then, I mean, that impacted so many things, not obviously with our work, but also with just how we ran as an organization, because prior to that, everything was in person. Then we were virtual and we kind of had to figure out how are we going to get back to, this new normal, right? So, one of the first things we did, this is when I was president-elect, we worked on a resource guide for school psychologists to support like that utilize social emotional learning and
Mm.
MTSS for reentry for students, but also for staff members too. So that was a guide that we put together. And then the president prior to me, he was working on a learning challenges initiative just to help provide some guidance in that capacity. And then when I came in as president, I focused a lot on mental health, addressing those needs. And also just kind of focusing on the comprehensive role of the school psychologist, because in New Jersey, we wear many hats. For case managers, for counseling, we're, doing cognitive assessment. We're doing so many different things. And it was just like, let's advocate that we are the people you could come to support students and the mental health needs. So we focused a lot on that. And then we also, I think one of the things that we really implemented well was surveying our membership. Obviously, with my marketing background, I'm very big on
Yeah.
so, we did a lot of different surveys to make sure that we were meeting the needs of our membership and, the school psychologist across the state, and wanted to take that into account with most of the things that we did, especially professional development, because that changed so much from
Mhm.
COVID. We were again in person a lot before. So we would do a winter and a spring conference in person. Then we were all virtual. And we had a really great turnout from virtual events. So we were like, let's see how we could best meet the needs of our membership. Like, do they want in person? Do they want virtual? And we got kind of a mixture of both is what everybody really liked. So we started trying to implement that. And we started doing like a series of virtual webinars for people in the evenings, like at times that accommodated their schedules and everything, so that we could continue to provide that professional development that way as well. So yeah, it was a lot of surveys, a lot of polling membership and things of that nature, just to kind of make sure that we were meeting their needs.
That's incredible. I know that's been something talking with a lot of different leaders across our different states. Coming out of COVID, do we go back to the in person? So many people kind of felt zoomed out. We had too much Zoom time, but at the same time, it is so nice and convenient to
Yeah.
not have to get up and go somewhere. But at the same time, we're missing that connection as well.
Exactly, because that's where you get a lot of your networking as well too.
Mhm.
But then again, like, sometimes it was difficult for districts to let people go for an entire day of a, conference. So we started doing an in-person winter conference, and then we were doing still some spring in person. Then we kind of switched to just doing one just based on needs, and we offer a lot of virtual PDs throughout the year. But again, the other thing too is like so much with like the advancement of the digital technology and everybody now offering so much online. It was like, you have so much that you could access that way. How do we compete with that as a state organization and still have value for our members? So we just kind of want to make sure we were bringing in, people who were going to present on topics that were of need. Like obviously AI is something, mental health, what's coming up new, and like cognitive assessment and, psychoeducational assessment and things like that. And again, I'm looking for like feedback surveys. Who did you like? We could bring them back, like legal, like what's new in that field and everything. So yeah, again, back to surveying and marketing research.
Well, and going back to what you had said in regards to how you really got started with your state association, it was in person. connection at NASP. And I think that's one of the things that we don't always see or get that opportunity with a lot of our virtual. And if it's someone who does a lot of virtual online professional development, there are those different pieces that we don't get that opportunity. So I like how your association is trying to do that balance.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I know it's difficult. We actually, during COVID, we were trying to do some networking events virtually. Like we did like a happy hour virtually, and it's just kind of challenging, especially like when you're just kind of talking to somebody over the computer sometimes, like to just kind of understand, like, oh, this is what we do and why don't you get involved? Again, like you were saying, we try to do a balance of those type of things with networking in person, professional development virtually, and then conferences as needed in person and virtual.
Hey everyone, Jenny Panzeric here with a quick video I hope you find useful. As you were thinking about ways to provide support to your staff next year, I wanted to share a resource that may be useful. As you know, executive functioning skills are a hot topic in special education. Some of you may have had me come to your district to present on this topic, which is one of my favorite. And I likely shared some resources to support the students at your schools who struggle with time management, organization, etc. But what about the educators at your schools who struggle with these same skills? The special education assessment team member who struggles to get the report completed on time, or the teacher who struggles to prioritize. Do they respond to parent emails first and then work on the IEPs, or should the lesson plans be first? From teachers to SLPs to school psychs, and maybe even you, when an adult struggles with these skills, it can have an impact. This is why this summer I am launching the Executive Functioning Academy Educator Edition. Yes, we are going to be providing tips, strategies, and supports for the adults who work in education, who they themselves have executive skill challenges. Click on the link near this video to find out all of the details. We will have a summer cohort and a fall cohort. Registration is open for both of them. And as always, if you have any questions, hit reply to this email or send me a DM. I am happy to answer them. Until next time, have a great rest of your day. Well, when you think back as your year of president, what accomplishment in that role are you most proud of?
So I have kind of a few things that come to mind for that question. So I'm just fortunate. I work with an incredible group of people and they have amazing ideas. And, I feel like the role really made me grow stronger as a leader and just kind of organizing everyone. And they have varying perspectives on so many different things and just trying to get us to focus and, collaborate on the priorities and initiatives that really mean the most to the youth that we serve in the state. So that was really something I really enjoyed doing. And then just mentoring some of the newer people who were coming onto the board just to help them realize like what they could do in their role and how they can accomplish what they're passionate about and why they joined the board in the first place. So just kind of getting them to, you know, find the role that they needed to then get their interests met and be passionate about this. So I really think that we did a really great job like communicating with our membership and just getting them involved, gauging their needs. And then, also during my presidency, we partnered with several different state universities through grants that we were receiving in the state. And we focused on mentorship and training. We were asked to work on with this one particular university to do like a lot of professional development in mental health, which has been really great. And then we were also like, I was asked as president to give a commencement speech at one of the state universities, which
Wow.
doing, and I was also asked to present on PSW when it came to a conference for principals and supervisors and things. So we really focused on like fostering these relationships with other stakeholders and other groups and just working to collaborate on initiatives that are important that are going to impact our youth.
That's incredible. With a lot of the universities that you had that connection with, were all of them, graduate programs in school psychology, or was it a broader perspective?
It's mostly graduate students in school psychology, but we also are trying to target undergraduate programs as
Yeah.
to get more people to come into the field. And we actually, our association has a diversity committee and we offer scholarships. We offer one for an undergraduate who's studying psychology to get them to want to become school psychologists. And then we also offer a scholarship for graduate students in school psychology to help them get through the program and into the field. So, yeah.
That's incredible. Well, reflecting on when you were a first year school psychologist, what advice would you give to someone who's starting out in the field?
So I think the immediate thing I think of was always like make sure you take time for self care. But also, I think it's really important to find a school psych buddy, like somebody you could just chat with, you ask questions, bounce ideas off of. And because you learn so much, but you come out and it's okay if you don't know it all, you're still kind of learning on the job, right? So just kind of having somebody that you could collaborate with is really important. I think like the continuing professional development to stay current in what's coming, the field is constantly changing and evolving, and I think just that really helps you stay current. And then I think for me, it's like kind of building relationships with people, right? So, you kind of come out of school and you have all these great ideas, but you're kind of starting off and you're like, how do I navigate doing these things? And I remember somebody who was mentoring me told me just establish those relationships, build that trust with everyone, and then eventually you might be able to spearhead some things that you really want to focus on in your district. So I started doing that and I was able to, in one of the districts I worked at, start this social thinking curriculum. And we did that with preschool children and it really helped with like the behavioral needs. Like we saw a lot of decrease actually in the referrals that we were getting in that area. So it's just like, like to kind of see like what the need is in your school and you might be able to build on that and kind of implement things when you have that buy-in and that trust.
Well, I know that's something that a lot of school psychologists, like you mentioned, they're coming out, they have all these great ideas. Can you talk a little bit more about what did that process look like for you when you were trying to or thinking about like this might be a really great thing for this population, we see this need. What was that kind of connection process for you when you were making sure that cuz for many school psychologists, they themselves aren't the decision makers. They're not the ones who can rip the band-aid off and go, let's start this. So could you share a little bit more about what that looked like?
Yeah, so in New Jersey, we're members of the child study team, and then we also have INRS, but it's basically like MTSS, So, and then we have a specific one for preschool. It's called the PERT team. So, and I was on that team, and I was collaborating with other people. So I had like a behavior specialist I was working with and a counselor, and we were just kind of like seeing all these referrals coming through. And I was like, okay, there's something going on here. I think like, and I kind of just said, I remember this curriculum that I had actually learned an internship. And I was like, we started kind of just bouncing ideas off of each other. And when I was explaining it, they were like, okay, let's just give it a shot. Like, what could go wrong? Right. Like, we'll go in, we'll take turns. And we started developing like and we didn't do it exactly like the way we kind of incorporated it into like what would feed the needs in our district. Right. So we kind of like, because it was like green and red, I think were the color choices. And you would be like, it was a good choice or a bad choice. And we didn't want to use certain language. So we kind of just changed it a little bit to meet those needs. And then we worked on like how we were going to like set that forth. So I was working with this behavior specialist. We would go into the classrooms and do a lesson, usually it would involve a book. Like, so we would go during circle time, read a social story, talk about it, do an activity. But we also got the buy-in from parents. We sent a letter home explaining what we were doing and saying like, if you could also work on these things using the language, it was a good choice and a think about it choice. And if you could use those things at home, then we could work on these type of things, like wrap around kind of basically.
Yeah.
And then we got a lot of buy-in from that, and it was great because then we were hearing from parents like, "My daughter said it was a think about it choice," and stuff like that. But it was great. So I think it was just like kind of again, like having those relationships, collaborating with your teammates and just, learning from each other and bouncing those ideas off each other was how we were able to establish that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about that. Well, we're going to go back to the advice question here. You talked a lot about improving your own leadership skills. What advice would you give to someone who wants to improve their own leadership skills?
Well, I think there's a few things at that. So yeah, I think it's just like kind of like knowing your time commitment, what you want to get involved in, and then establishing boundaries for yourself as well, because it's like we could only do so much like when you have a full plate, right? Like, and it's like it goes back to self care, I think with that as well. So kind of just doing like kind of like a self assessment and just seeing like what am I able to give? And then kind of going from there. So like what I usually say to people coming onto the board and when they want to get involved in things is like we need as a board, to provide mentorship, but also being able to tell them like this is the level of time and commitment that you would need to be in this role, right? And then also kind of working with micro volunteers where, you might take on, oh, I'm going to work with the newsletter and help in this capacity, but I'm not taking on that leadership role and being really involved in the executive board in that way. So, whatever level of commitment you could give, you could then like kind of focus on those interests that you have and then help with the board in that kind of capacity. So I think just kind of really knowing what you can provide and then what we could provide you so we could collaborate and work together.
I love what you were sharing with the people who are doing the mentoring to be able to really think about like, this is how much time commitment to this task or commitment to this committee may take. Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and be a part of this committee. And then all of a sudden it snowballs into a lot of things that we weren't ready for. And so I like that transparency at the beginning.
I think that's really important because otherwise, you're right. You kind of take on this role, and then all of these things come your way. You're like, "Whoa, I wasn't expecting all of that." And plus, I'm trying to juggle, a job or a family or all these other things. So
Right.
I always think that this was like years ago. I read this book, but it was like the lesson of like juggling five balls, and it was like work, life, family, commitment, like all these different things, and like you just kind of have to keep them all up in the air. But if you like aren't doing a great job, one is gonna drop, right? And that might be, like, something that's gonna shatter and not be able to come back. So, you have to kinda try to figure out what your balance is and what level of commitment and time you could put forward in that.
I love that. Well, speaking of time and time commitments, I know a lot of people do want to become more involved. How do you manage your time? You have a family, you are working, you are also involved in state association for many years. How have you been making it work for yourself?
So, personally, I have a really great support system at home to help me with that too. So, when I started with the board, I didn't have the family yet or anything like that. So it was a little different. I had more time available. And then when that happened, it was, I have a really great support system to help me like balance that. But also with our association, we really try to meet the needs of like everybody on the board in that kind of way. So we schedule things in advance, so we'll do like a year at a glance of what all the board meetings are going to be. And they usually typically are in the evening. So it's after work.
Mhm.
On a day that is convenient for most people. Some of our committees too will say, okay, we're going to meet bi-monthly. These are the times, and they'll put that forward in advance so people know. And most of the time we end up just really like using, again, surveys, doodle polls to see when everybody's available and then
Yeah.
working together. But I think what's really helped too is just like the advancement in technology and just digital access to everything. So, you could collaborate with multiple people, on a project or an initiative just on like a Google document or this and that. And that's
Right.
really helpful for getting things done.
That's great. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share or promote about your state association?
Sure, of course. So we've been really hard at work to support school psychologists over the last few years and everything. I was mentioning earlier about the grants that the universities received and they partnered with us. And it's just been really great. We've been offering a series of professional development. It's called Be Well Initiative, and it really is focusing on mental health. And we're working with students, but we're also allowing practitioners and everything to join
Mhm.
too. A cost it's free to students, and then they pay us like a very, very minimal fee to attend. We've really seen a lot of involvement with that. Our government professional relationships committee, they've been providing like a lot of position papers or just like guidance for advocacy, grassroots advocacy, and how to get your voice heard, especially in this political climate and things that are going on right now. So just, being there to support the membership in that way. And we have an ethics committee, which has really worked a lot in the past too with helping school psychologists. If they have a question, they could just submit that anonymously. And then we have an educated source to provide guidance. So, if you have a conflict of interest that might occur if you're speaking up to protect the needs of your students and stuff like that, it really helps with that also. And then, like I was saying, our delegates on our membership committee have really been doing a great job of like networking events and doing some things in person and some things virtually just to try to get more involvement and just connect school psychologists across districts and in counties. So we have like a few county level groups that are meeting. So we have different regions and then county level groups that are meeting in person and just, being able to bounce questions off each other and get involved. And that's how we're trying to encourage people to join the board and get involved so you could have your voice heard and really just get involved and be something that you're passionate about doing and advocating for school psychologists and also children and what's in their best interest.
Well, and we will make sure to put a link to your state association's website in our show notes. So anyone listening would be able to see everything that's going on that you were just sharing. So thank you so much. Well, this podcast is called the Prepared School Psychologist. When you think of that term, what do you do to help yourself feel more prepared in your many roles?
So I think just like for me, it's organization and just prioritizing tasks. So I'm like very like I have to have a to-do list. These are the things I want to tackle, but also being flexible because we do have so many rules and so many things we have to do. So it's like, for me, just kind of knowing like, okay, if this is what my plan is this week, but I might have to pivot and do this. I know like what I have coming and I could just kind of navigate that in that way. So yes, organization and I think prioritizing tasks really helps with that time management and also just like staying in compliance with cases and things of that nature. And then I think like just being prepared is also just what you're learning like throughout your career and just continuing professional development and going to those, but also collaborating with other school psychologists, related service providers, other educators, other stakeholders. We learn so much from each other. And I think that's really helped just prepare you as a professional and getting to from when you're just beginning to like an intermediate level and then more advanced in the different areas we focus on.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Kristine, for sharing your incredible insights and your experiences with all of us today. Your dedication to both students and the field is truly inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.
And to the listeners, thank you for tuning in, whether you're just starting out or further along in your career. I hope today's conversation gave you some valuable strategies and a deeper understanding of how we can all impact our schools and communities. Until next time, keep supporting, keep learning, and stay prepared. That concludes another episode of the Prepared School Psych Podcast. And I hope today's discussion equipped you not just with knowledge, but also the confidence to take action. Remember, every conversation we have and every resource we share builds a bridge towards a more inclusive and empowering learning landscape for our students. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more insightful conversations and resources to support your journey. Share this podcast with colleagues. We would love it if you would also rate and review the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Just a reminder, everyone, the information and advice provided in this podcast are for guidance purposes only, and all listeners are required to follow both federal and state law and their own school district guidelines and policies. Thank you.